The situation with Christy has been heartbreaking. As a father, I've always tried to protect my children, but now it feels like my own daughter is fighting against me, and it's tearing me apart. I never wanted any of this to happen. I never imagined I would have to choose between my children's happiness and my own. But I know deep down that this is the right decision. I can't let my life be dictated by guilt or by the hope that things could be different if I just waited long enough. The betrayal my wife committed isn't something that can be easily overlooked. Her affair wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a fleeting moment of weakness. It was a conscious choice, and she continued it for months. She lied to my face, built an entire secret life without me, and even managed to make me feel like I was the one at fault when I confronted her. In those moments, I questioned everything I knew about our relationship. How could someone I loved so much betray me so completely? But as the days passed after our confrontation, I came to realize that my wife's actions were not just a reflection of her failing, but a mirror of the changes in our lives. For years, she had been living a comfortable life, supported by the wealth of her family. When that wealth started to crumble, so did her sense of security. Instead of facing reality and trying to adapt, she turned to someone else. The affair was her escape, her way of trying to fill the void left by the loss of her family's wealth, and ultimately, her own sense of identity. It was never about me, it was about her own inability to handle the changes in her life. Still, that doesn't excuse what she did. The pain of discovering her affair is something I don't think I'll ever fully recover from. It wasn't just the betrayal of trust, it was the fact that she never even considered how it would affect me. How could she? She had been living in a bubble, surrounded by luxury, where the consequences of her actions didn't seem to matter. When everything came crashing down, she tried to use me as her safety net, expecting me to forgive her and move forward as if nothing had happened. But I can't do that. Not after everything that's transpired. Now that we're in the middle of the divorce, my wife has been doing everything she can to try and reverse the damage she's done. She's begged me for a second chance, claiming that she's sorry, that she wants to make things right, and that the affair meant nothing to her. But I've heard it all before. The words are empty, and they hold no weight. She can apologize all she wants, but the reality is that trust is something that takes years to build and seconds to destroy. There's no going back from this. In a way, it feels like she's just trying to salvage her own reputation. She doesn't want to be the one who's seen as the villain in this story, the one who ruined her family. It's easier for her to play the victim, to act like she made a mistake, and that if I just give her a little more time, everything will go back to normal. But I know it won't. I've seen the cracks in our relationship long before the affair came to light. The loss of her family's wealth exposed her insecurities, and instead of facing them, she ran away from them. And now, I'm the one left to pick up the pieces. The divorce is only the beginning of this painful process. As much as I want to move on with my life, I know that this is going to be a long and difficult journey. There are the kids to consider, and their well-being is my top priority. I don't want them to feel abandoned or torn apart by this. But at the same time, I can't continue to let their mother manipulate the situation. She's used them as pawns in her game of emotional blackmail, trying to convince them that I'm the one destroying the family. But it's not me. It's her choices that led us here. Christy's refusal to accept reality is one of the hardest things I've had to deal with. She's not the only one in pain, but she's the only one who refuses to see that I'm hurting too. She keeps telling me that I owe it to her mother to try and make things work. But what about my own happiness? What about the fact that I've spent the past 2 decades trying to build a life with someone who has now proven that she's not the person I thought she was? If I stay with her, I'm not just hurting myself, I'm hurting my children by teaching them that infidelity is something they should tolerate, that forgiveness means putting up with betrayal. The hardest part is seeing my wife now, after everything has come to light. She's no longer the woman I married. She's someone who is desperately trying to hold on to a life that no longer exists. The wealth that once defined her, the security she felt in her family's status, is gone. And now she's left with nothing but the remnants of a broken marriage. She knows she has no claim to alimony, no financial support, and that the prenup leaves her with very little. She's scared, and I can see that. But I can't let that fear dictate my decisions. I've worked hard for everything I have, and I've been a devoted husband and father for years. My loyalty was always with my family, even when things were tough. But now, I have to be loyal to myself. I have to protect my own peace and move forward with my life, even if that means leaving behind the woman I thought I would grow old with. It's not easy. Divorce never is, especially when children are involved. But I know that this is the right decision. I can't keep living a lie. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. The hardest part is seeing the pain in my children's eyes, knowing that they're torn between their mother and me. But in the end, I hope they will understand. I hope they will see that sometimes, the hardest decision is the one that ultimately leads to a better future. I can't give up on my own happiness just to keep everyone else happy. It's time for me to move on. It's never easy to come to a decision like this, but I've reached a point where I must prioritize my own mental and emotional well-being. As painful as it is, I've decided to limit contact with my daughter Christy until after the divorce is finalized. I know this decision will cause her pain, and I'm not immune to that. The last thing I ever wanted was for my family to be torn apart. But the situation with Christy has become so complicated, so strained, that it's become necessary. I don't take this decision lightly, but I must protect myself. This divorce, this situation, has been incredibly difficult, and I've been advised by my lawyer to avoid direct contact with Christy for the time being. It's not just the divorce proceedings themselves that are hard to handle. It's the emotional turmoil, the constant manipulation, and the deep betrayal that cuts deeper with each passing day. Christy has been through a lot. I know that. But the way she's handled everything, the way she's refused to accept the reality of what's happening, has been beyond challenging. I've tried to help her. I've tried to explain things. But she's refused therapy, refused to see things from my perspective, and continues to push me to reconcile with her mother. I cannot allow her to pull me back into that toxic dynamic. And for my own peace of mind, I've made the hard decision to cut ties, at least for now. At the same time, it breaks my heart that my other children are becoming increasingly concerned about Christy's behavior. They've told me it's getting worse, and they're genuinely worried about how this situation is affecting her. I've watched as Christy has spiraled into a state of denial, anger, and frustration. The weight of the betrayal, the confusion, the emotional pressure, it's all too much for her, and I can see that. But I've done everything I can to try and help her. I've offered support. I've tried to talk things through, but she refuses to acknowledge the reality of the situation. She's the one who's unwilling to face the truth, and that's not something I can change. After reading through some of the comments and the feedback I've gotten, I realized there were some points that needed clarification. The truth has a way of getting twisted in the midst of such an emotionally charged situation. so I want to make sure that the facts are clear. When I mentioned that my wife would be effectively homeless, I didn't mean it in the way some of you interpreted. The house we own together is paid off. We don't owe a mortgage. And as part of the divorce, we'll sell the house and split the proceeds. She will receive her fair share, but it won't be enough for her to live comfortably on her own. That's the reality. I've always taken care of her, financially and otherwise, and I will continue to do so. But I cannot continue this relationship. I cannot allow her actions, her betrayal, to destroy what's left of my dignity, my peace, and my sense of self. One point that's been misunderstood is the nature of my wife's role in our family. She didn't give up her career to raise our children. She could have easily hired a nanny, but she chose to stay at home with the kids. That was her decision. And yes, she was receiving a monthly allowance from her family's estate, which covered many of her personal expenses, including a housekeeper. I paid for that allowance because I wanted to make things easier for her. I didn't mind doing it. But at the same time, that doesn't change the fact that she's betrayed me in ways that I cannot forgive. The prenup we signed is another point of confusion for some. It's important to understand that the agreement addressed my wife's allowance from her family's estate. It was a fair deal that prevented me from claiming half of the family money, and in return, she agreed not to seek alimony in the event of a divorce. The terms were clear, and we both agreed to them. It's been a source of stability for both of us. But now, with everything that's happened, it's become a painful reminder of the trust that has been broken. I never wanted my children to be involved in this divorce. I never wanted them to see the ugly side of what's been going on. But my wife chose to drag them into this, using them as pawns in her efforts to manipulate me into reconciling. I've tried to keep them out of it, to shield them from the pain of seeing their parents split, but she keeps pushing. She keeps trying to get them to pressure me into forgiving her. I don't discuss the divorce unless they bring it up, but Christy in particular has been relentless. She keeps pushing me to forgive her mother, and I just can't. As for why my wife cheated, I'll be honest, I don't think it matters anymore. It's irrelevant to me now. What matters is the fact that she did it. She betrayed me in the most painful way, and I can't pretend like it didn't happen. The man she cheated with was younger, no more than 30, but I don't care to know more details. It doesn't change anything for me. The damage has been done, and I've made my decision. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who supported me throughout this process. Your advice has been invaluable, especially when it came to handling Christy. I took some of your advice to heart and decided to sit down with her and explain that what's going on between her mother and me is not her fault. I told her that I couldn't ever go back to a woman who deceived me in such a massive way. I've tried to be understanding and forgiving, but I will not tolerate malicious deceit. I tried to stay calm, to be loving, to help her understand that I'm not abandoning her. But despite my best efforts, it didn't help. She broke down and begged me to forgive her mother, to give our family a second chance. I refused. That conversation marked a turning point for me. I realized that no matter how much I loved my daughter, I couldn't continue to let her manipulate me, to keep dragging me back into the drama and the hurt. So I made the difficult decision to go no contact with Christy for a while. I need space to heal. I need time to figure out what's best for me, for my own well-being. 2 days before my other daughter Jane's birthday, I sent a text to both Christy and my wife, asking them not to bring up the divorce during the celebration. I didn't want it to overshadow what should have been a special day for Jane. The day was tense, but I hoped it would be manageable. That was until my wife made a passive-aggressive comment about how nice it was to have family together during important events. It was an obvious jab at me, and it was the last straw. My son, Jack, called her out on it, saying it was selfish to bring up the divorce during Jane's birthday. Christy immediately jumped to her mother's defense, and in that moment, Jane, upset by the whole situation, revealed that Christy had known about the affair all along and had helped her mother cover it up. It was a bombshell. It shattered me. I never expected Christy to betray me like this. I didn't expect her to side with her mother, but I certainly didn't expect her to help cover up the affair. That was a moment of profound heartbreak. I left the celebration devastated not just by my wife's betrayal, but by Christy's as well. The trust that had been built between us was gone in an instant. Now, I'm resolved to stay no contact with Christy until the divorce is finalized and possibly for the rest of my life. I never wanted things to turn out this way, but the level of betrayal I've experienced has been too much to bear. It's hard to let go of a daughter, to walk away from the relationship we had, but I have to do what's best for me. I need to heal. I need to take care of myself. This is a journey I never imagined I'd have to take, but here I am. And all I can do now is move forward, one step at a time.